India, the place where the military decision making is worse than Pakistan, the place that destroyed the reputation of the Rafale by not being able to use it properly. Seriously, what was the Air Force thinking when they were going to Pakistan and having less electronic warfare and AWACS than the opponent? Also, Pakistan will get a video too, and I will criticize them as well, but I will praise them a little bit more as well. Um, so Indian military episode, and oh boy. So, warning to any Indians watching this, I am simply stating my opinion. I will give criticism where it is necessary and praise where it is deserved. So, to get you all in the mood, I am going to do a little bit of praising. So, first off, the Indians used the OT-64 Scott in their military in a war against Pakistan, and the OT-64 Scott was the best APC in the world at the time. It could easily outclass the BTR-60 and the M113. It was a Polish and Czech collaboration that became very successful. I spoke about it in my previous videos, and I don't really like to repeat myself, so just go watch them. But to give you a bit of a summary, it is better than the M113 because it has a 14.5mm HMG, which is a superior machine gun. Also, it has a rear exit unlike the BTR, and it is also amphibious. It pretty much has the best parts of both sides. It is truly the best APC out there. And also, India has used Polish components in the modernization of the T-72, which I do talk about in this video. India is also able to make the T-90S from scratch at this point. They don't really need anyone for help when it comes to that. And when it comes to the Air Force, they made their very own jet. Well, a light combat aircraft. So what a light combat aircraft is, it's something that isn't really on par with a large fighter like the Rafale, the C-35, the F-15, but other stuff like the lightweight little buggers that will ruin anyone's day, like the MiG-29 or the F-16. So we will start off with the Arjun. It is a massive pile of junk. So first of the armor, you see, it was tested against its own gun, and it is said that it could resist it very well. However, you see, 125mm guns that China and Pakistan are using are stronger. And why, you may ask? Well, you see, the way the 120mm rifled gun was made was most likely by taking a 105mm gun and boring it out. It can fire a bad APFSDS round, a HESH, a funny named high explosive round, and an ATGM. The ATGM is the best anti-armor option thing on this. However, it is laser guided, so you have to be exposed while guiding it. However, guess what? Pakistan also has ATGM capable tanks, so it offers nothing really competitive in the anti-armor capability. And also, the Arjun's 120mm is not as strong as the French 120mm, or the German L44, or the British 120mm rifled. It is literally the weakest 120 out there, and the ammo for it is insanely lackluster. And you can tell it is a very different rifled gun from the British one, which a lot of people do make the confusion that they are the same guns, but they are not. Just look at the ammo. The Chali uses 3-piece ammunition, and the Arjun has single-piece ammunition. Look at this image. Guys, the T-72B has a better armored turret and hull than this. Old Leopard 2A4s have better armor than this. And that hull, the armor thickness and composition is close to a T-72A, but slightly worse, and it is only a bit more angled. I do believe it will survive some hits from, I don't know, full bore 100mm ammo, but any sabers will just go through. However, Pakistan is putting 125mm guns into their T-55s. Pakistan is also using T-80UDs that they purchased from Ukraine, and they also got some nice thermals in there too. I could bet the left wheel of my wheelchair that a T-80UD will be able to beat the Arjun. and I can make this bet safely knowing that fight won't happen, as the majority of the Argents are screwed due to engine issues. But back to the armor. It is not able to withstand a 125 mm. It also has a giant weak spot in its armor, and somehow it also weighs 60 tons. And that is because a lot of steel is used in the armor composition and not as much composite. ERA has been added to it, however, it still leaves a large unprotected part. And now the mobility. I can say this is one of the better things about the tank on paper, and I'll get to that a bit later. So the Mark 1 uses an MTU MB838 KA501 V10 engine with about 1,400 horsepower. And the Mark 1A has a 1,500 horsepower V12 engine, giving it about 24 horsepower per ton. And also the transmission has 4 forward gears and 2 reverse gears. The suspension is hydropneumatic. It can reach about 70 kilometers, and that is actually pretty good. And it can reach also a pretty decent speed in reverse. But there is this issue. So, after talking to some people who are familiar with the Indian military, a Polish show I watch often that are very factual very often, and they get a lot of info that is very reliable. They claim, and so did a few other of my sources, that the Indian made engines are painted inside, which is why they overheat a lot. Also, the manufacturing quality isn't always the best, so to anyone who knows a lot about cars or anything about car engines, you can already know that this is a bad thing. You should not put paint inside the engine. But someone in the Indian factories thought it would be a smart idea. Also, they paint the engines with a paint that doesn't really help with like getting rid of the heat, which is also another issue for the engines. And there are some engines which have holes inside them that are so big you can stick your thumb in it. So the engines themselves aren't really bad, it's just the manufacturing and maintenance. So there are also units in the Indian army which, rather than get their engines fixed where they should properly get them fixed, like, some licensed manufacturer or some, professional, they prefer to save up some money and go to like a local like 2 or 3 dudes who will, like, I don't know, fix motorbike engines or stuff like that. And they'll be like, hey, fix this tank engine. And those people, not knowing what the fuck to do with a tank engine, who are just used to motorbike engines all their lives, end up making a lot of mistakes when doing this. This is insanely bad. And it's mainly due to corruption and money saving and stuff like that. So they pretty much ruined the only good thing on paper about the Argent. The thermals are, well, according to some sources, second generation and others third generation. Which makes me just disappointed. All thermals should be third generation in the modern day, or at least, I don't know, invent a fourth one, or something like that. And lastly, something that has to be mentioned is the survivability after a hit. Notice it, one piece ammo in large casings. They aren't like the ones on the L44, and also like the ones anywhere else. So, first off, let's start with the casing itself. You see, look at the ammo on the L44. Right, do you know why it's grey? Well, it's because it's made out of some weird cellulose thing. So, when the tank fires the gun, that gets evacuated, like with the gases and everything, and it just burns out, leaving only this part behind, which just falls out the breech and doesn't really take up any space inside the tank. But when you have a large brass casing jumping out of the breech, and that falls on the ground, that's going to take up some space and it's going to be annoying for the crew. It is not a very nice solution. So that is one thing. And second is the gunpowder. Well, you see, a majority of Western tanks use DM11, DM53, or DM63. And the gunpowder in there, it doesn't detonate when it is hit. It will only detonate when you use an electric spark. So if an enemy projectile hits the ammo stowage, it won't blow up the tank. In the Argent, you don't have that. And before DM53 was used in Leopards, and there were older ammo types, it wasn't really safe. Here are some tragic photos of what happened to Leopards when they were hit. The turret flew and the hull got torn. I doubt the crews survived at all. It was tragic. This is why I strongly believe that ammo that doesn't have a safer gunpowder is a massive disadvantage. The lives of many tankers will be saved thanks to this new and modern gunpowder. As India uses a completely different 120mm that isn't compatible with anything, they aren't able to use this. So in any conflict, the crews of the Argent tanks are not safe. I have mentioned that its armor is not so good. Any tandem heat missile will go through even the most armored Argent. It shouldn't be too hard. And I have no doubt that, for example, some Chinese export APFSDS for the 125 will have no issue in penetrating the Argent. And also, India uses HESH rounds in the ammo racks for the Argent. To anyone who knows anything about how devastating and explosive HESH is, you can already know where this is going, and with the, not using the right powder and explosives for them, a detonation of this would just be absolutely horrible. Here is what happened to Challenger 2 tanks in Ukraine when ammo was detonated. Here, you can see the gun has been detached from the turret. Conclusively, this tank would only be good as a concept or as a prototype. As a statement, yes, we Indians can make a tank as well, and then, if they further developed it or took some lessons and made like another model until they come up with something really good, then yeah, it would be fine. However, it, the person who approved this tank into production is a fucking idiot. So, to lighten the mood a little bit, I will now talk about the Zorovar tank. Let's start with its firepower. It is the standard 105mm rifled. It should be able to deal with any threat in the Indian-Chinese border, as this is what the Zorovar was designed for. The Chinese were able to make a light tank purposely built for it, but now India has made something to rival it. Just like the Chinese, it has an autoloader. However, look at that elevation. Oh my god, I like this. However, this is a Belgian designed turret, and I also wonder what the Belgians were compensating for. That elevation is something that you need to have in the mountainous regions. The autoloader, unfortunately, has only 12 shells in it, and the rest of the ammunition is most likely going to be stored in the hull. And it can fire heat, HESH, smoke, canister, APFSDS, and even ATGMs. Unfortunately, only laser guided ones, which are a disadvantage. So, it can deal with any threat pretty much in there. However, a programmable fuse high explosive round would be a much better option against everything. NATO, with their 120mm guns, is now going to be using APFSDS and an all-purpose programmable fuse high explosive, which is the best option as you don't need to have heat now or canister. Also, France and UK want to use French Acheron ATGMs, which are fire and forget, and they can also be guided mid-flight. So, like, you can switch the modes from being fire and forget to being guided, and also you can look through the seek ahead like you're looking through the optic of a drone or something. It is a really cool ATGM, and it is also top attack. Every other ATGM in tanks is laser guided, meaning you have to expose yourself. But overall, this is actually a pretty good tank, and this turret has seen a load of vehicles, as it is very modular. And also on the side, it has a drone launcher, which is honestly amazing. Extra situational awareness is always great. And in Ukraine, the longest tank on tank kill happened because the gunner of a T-64 was also using a drone to correct his shots. And it got an over 20-kilometer tank on tank kill. So the drone idea is very forward thinking. India is now one of the countries which is really pushing for the integration of drones and tanks together. Although this is not in full scale production yet, it is pretty good, and the gun on the roof is also remote operated, which is just a modern requirement for every tank at this point. The armor is said to be level 5 Stanag, meaning it can withstand a 25mm APDS. Guess what? Chinese autocannons, 30mm ones. They have about similar or same penetration as a 25mm APDS, so it should be safe from them, or at least at long distances be safe from them. However, the Type 15 is way more protected and it has a hard kill APS. There is also an ERA option for it, and it also has the composite armor option. So when it comes to armor, the Chinese are way ahead of India. And when it comes to the engine, well, it's either a 800 horsepower one or a 1000 horsepower one. Different sources will state differently on that, but it's pretty good, which on a 20 something ton vehicle is extremely good. However, India has expressed interest in the Su-25, which is absolutely trash, and if you want to know why, then watch this video. Just when I thought India has something cool, they just ruin it by buying stuff from Russia. Seriously, what is the Indian leadership thinking by getting good ties with Russia? India has also made their own APC, the Tata Kestrian, I don't know. The turret is from a BMP2, guys. You know, 30mm AP ammo for that gun is about as good as 20mm ammo on the Marder. And that ATGM on it is obsolete by now. There are javelins, N-Nors, spikes, Acherons, and that turret will only be able to withstand 50 cal ball ammo. 50 cal AP will go through. And as soon as anything bigger shows up, it's just guaranteed Swiss cheese. The hull has a rear exit, something Russia still hasn't figured out how to do for decades, or at least put into mass production. Seriously, Russia, even India has put into production a APC with a rear exit. What are you doing with those BTR 82s? But the hull armor is actually a lot better than the turret. It can withstand a 14.5mm HMG fire, and with applique armor, it will withstand 25mm APDS. So it really is superior to the Russian BTR. That feels like an insult to Russia, saying that India has something better than them. It is also amphibious and pretty mobile on land. And the engine is a Cummins ISX E600 diesel engine. It can also use the Ashok Leyland 600 horsepower engine, and there's also some other 600 horsepower engine, if I remember correctly, that they can use. And this generates about 24 horsepower per ton, which is pretty good. The transmission is an Allison 4500 SP, which is automatic, just modern standard at this point. The suspension is hydropneumatic, and it has a maximum speed of about 100 kilometers, an operational range of about 500 kilometers on road. Off road, it's like 250. And then they only buy 200 of them, which is a bit of a common problem for many Indian equipment. They will always just come out with something new and claim how amazingly Indian it is, and then they order a tiny amount. The production is slower than Leopard 2 production, and the Leopard 2 production is an insult to Europe. But my opinions on the Germans being slow is for later. And back to the topic. After buying an insultingly low amount, India then decides to just buy a load of foreign stuff. Like, at this point, what is the point of Zorovar if you end up buying the 2S25? I swear, their military and industrial leadership is a whole different level of disappointing. So, I don't really know anything about the Indian Navy, just but boats are not my thing. I'll now talk about the Air Force. Remember, India is the country which single handedly destroyed the reputation of the Rafale and their own forces. Well done. So they got this really good, really advanced, newest French fighter that should be able to wipe the floor with the Pakistan's J-10s and JF-17s. However, the BL-15 fought otherwise, and three Rafales got downed. Seriously, how do you lose three Rafales to the J-10? I have no words for this. And I also have to admit, Pakistan's Air Force was extremely good in those few days when they faced the Indian Air Force. They utilized the better tactics with more AWACS and more electronic warfare. And India will try to cope about this forever now. But seriously, guys, how the fuck do you lose three Rafales? I have this little guilty pleasure. I really like the JF-17 that Pakistan made. It is really cool and it will get a video eventually. India also operates MiG-29s, often naval carrier, and Su-30s, and I have no complaint there. It's just the standard thing to do when you're poor and you want to have an air force. And then there is this little redeeming guy in the Indian Air Force, the Tejas. So some of my fans know that I really like the F5, and as a result, I also like a lot of the other light fighters. And I am a massive believer in the high-low mix. And what is that, you may ask? Well, it's something like the F4 and F5 combo, the F15 and the F16, the F22 and the F35. You have your big missile truck with a powerful radar that is able to deal with most powerful enemies and deliver large amounts of bombs. And there is this a lot lighter, fraction of the price, fraction of the maintenance, and being able to do most tasks with I'd say about 70% of the effectiveness. So that's what the high-low mix is. You have your big, amazing at everything, and you have your good at everything. The F5 was not as good of a bomber and missile fighter as the F4, but it was still extremely good. And America would export both types of aircraft everywhere. The Tejas is that low fighter, a cheap, small, lightweight, and extremely capable little guy. And the Mark II is going to get canards, which are pretty cool. So this small little guy is able to carry the Derby missile, which is a Fox 3 missile, which doesn't really have very long range, but that's fine, because they have something better later. And also for stuff for like long range engagements, India can still use things like Su-30, and if they get their shit together, they could use the Rafale properly. Meanwhile, this guy could be destroying a whole bunch of other stuff like cruise missiles, or it can assist larger fighters in destroying another jet. It can also use the Python 5 missiles, which are straight up. Well, let's just say that stuff is powered. It can use a. It can basically do a 180-degree turn mid-air and just ignore all your countermeasures, and it will kill you. It's just a guarantee that the Python 5 will kill you. They have the Astra Mark 1, which is a 110-kilometer range BVR missile in a head on engagement. However, that isn't really good range for modern day. Seriously, what the hell? And then there is the Astra Mark 2, which has 150 to 160 kilometers of range, which is, yeah, that's decent for modern day. And when the missile knows that it is getting close to the target, a second booster will ignite and it will give it extra speed and maneuverability. It also has much better off bullseye capability than the Mark 1. It has better tracking and it even has an ASR radar. So that is about as much information as I'm able to give you about the Tejas, because look, when it comes to planes, I know about missiles and bombs. I am not a massive avionics nerd and stuff like that nerd, or aerodynamics and stuff. And when it comes to destroying the wankers on the ground, it can use the French hammer. And oh, do I love this thing. It has been extremely well proven in Ukraine by destroying many Russian targets. And the funniest thing is, my people somehow manage to mount this on a Su-25, and that is just pure gold. But most commonly, I see them on MiG-29s, which India also has, and India has proven that they can integrate their own weapons with foreign jets. just like they did with the Astra missile by putting it on the Su-30 as well. Also, the Tejas will be able to use the Indian-made Brahmos cruise missile and the French Scalp, meaning if this sneaky little fucker gets behind your lines, it will cause a massive damage. Get too close and you get smacked with an Astra or a Python 5, which you just won't escape. And anyone on the ground just run from your vehicle. This thing can use also anti-radiation missiles and anti-ship missiles. Name a role, the Tejas can do it, and it comes in at about 40 something million or even cheaper. Meaning, India has built something which could be a perfect, cheap, lightweight, easy to maintain fighter. But you know what? They only manufactured 38 of them since 2001. That is embarrassingly slow. In the construction of the Tejas, it has about one of the highest percentages of composite materials used. And as much of the components as possible are made in India, which is why the production is so slow. Like seriously, just don't be afraid to order foreign components. Jesus Christ. And the engine that it uses is an F404 General Electric, which is also used on the F-20 Tiger Shark, the FA-18 Hornet, the FA-50, which are some of my favorite jets. And the Tejas Mark II is going to have the F414 engine, which is much better in performance. So conclusively, the Indian military has a bad MBT, a not so good APC, a decent and innovative light tank, and an absolutely amazing light multi-role fighter. If India also makes a carrier capable, then I'm gonna praise the Air Force and Navy of India. And Indians can be really proud of the Tejas, except the production amount. That is just bad. And now, in this part of the video, I will say how I would improve the military equipment. First off, the Arjun. Replace the gun with a 125mm. Give it a bustle autoloader and invent single-piece ammo for it. Then, move the optic upwards and also use more composite materials in the armor rather than steel. Fix the engine issue. There you go, it is not that hard. Also, India has about 2,000 T90s, making them one of the biggest users of the T90 in the world. So, T90 has mobility which is worse than my wheelchair. No joke, my wheelchair can go faster in reverse than the T90, and also it can do neutral steering, which the T90 isn't capable of. So, you gotta fix the mobility of the T90. Romania, Poland, Ukraine, Czechia, Pakistan, all of those countries were able to get a Soviet style MBT and give it much better reverse mobility. And seriously, guys, check out the mobility upgrades on the Romanian TR-85 and the TR-125. So, if the countries that I mentioned have an industry for tanks which is nowhere near as advanced as South Korea or America, or nowhere near as large even, and they can fix the issue, then India has zero excuse. And poor mobility can really lead to the death of many tankers, as in Ukraine, many Russian tankers, when having to reverse, they would turn the entire tank around and they would expose the rear, and then the invader thankfully dies. Next, the autoloader. Do what I said to do with the Arjun, a bustle autoloader with single piece ammunition. And also, don't give the new ammunition metal casings. And something like this is absolutely possible. Look at the Ukrainian T-84 Yatagan. So you take a T-80, you give it a good transmission, a bit of an engine upgrade, a bustle autoloader, you change out the gun, you give it new optics, and there you go. A Soviet-style MBT with a lot of Western features in it, and it can compete with anyone, and it's insanely cheap. At the time when it was being trialed against the Leopard, it was like 3.5 million. Don't know how much it would be worth nowadays, maybe like probably less than 10 million. But you get it, that is extremely cheap for a tank. India, if they really put effort into it, they could turn the T90 into something similar of the Yatagan. They could really fix that tank, but they're not doing it. Next is the APC. I'll just design the new turret at this point, or just buy the Patria AMV. Actually, no, India, don't buy the Patria AMV. You'll ruin its reputation like you did with the Rafale, and I would not be able to take that mentally. Um, so just give it a better turret. And when it comes to the Tejas, don't be afraid to buy foreign made components to speed up production. There's nothing wrong with that. F-35, for example, has production lines in Italy, in Germany. There's also Norwegian components and from all over NATO. Like, it's an American invention, but it's the least American thing in their current inventory due to how much foreign components are used in it. And it's absolutely fine. It is used for alliance strengthening. India could use something like that. So thank you guys for being patient, as the India episode did take a while. So God bless all my viewers, and Jesus Christ, this took a lot of my mental health, because the Argent, Jesus Christ, what were they thinking with the Argent? Oh man, uh, I am absolutely mentally devastated every time I read through the script and I read through the Argent parts. It's just ugh, I just don't feel good. As therapy, I have to look at the K2PL to feel fine again, or just a regular K2. Just yeah, what a beautiful tank, what an amazing tank, best tank in the world currently. Okay, now give me some alone time with it.